Welcome to the Prado Museum. We're here again a few minutes before it opens to the public with our weekly sessions in English on the social media programming, and this is a project that's supported to our donors to the U.S. nonprofit of American Friends of the Prado Museum. And today we have a really special session with Alejandro Vergara, the senior curator for Flemish painting at the Prado, and a really interesting temporary exhibit called the Workshop of Rubens. So,
good morning, Christina. How are you?
Good morning
to everybody. Yeah, we just installed a kind of a makeup of Rubens's workshop and paintings of his that tell us about how workshops made paintings in one of our galleries.
I'd love to see this really interesting layout of how you made this. You know, it's a really unique. We've
had
exhibit.
fun. We've had fun with this. Come over here.
Yeah.
I'll show you. What we've done is we've actually staged the workshop. I mean, it's a little sample, of course, but based on paintings and on prints and on descriptions of workshops, we've laid out here a bunch of different things that painters used. Like, for example, unusual things or things people won't think about. A mahlstick. That stick is called a mahlstick. They would use that to steady their right hand by holding it with their left hand and leaning it on paintings. And you can even see sometimes the scratches that mahlsticks make on the upper right corner of paintings.
Oh, interesting.
Also, we have palettes of painters with the colors placed in exactly the same way they were at the time. There's a certain order that they use. We have shells, mussel shells, and oyster shells, which they use to keep paint in. We have frames, we have all sorts of things around here.
So this would have been very 17th century.
Well, that's the idea, yeah. It's interesting because when we try to reconstruct this, you find that paintings that show painters' workshops are always trying to look upper class, noble, clean, because painters aren't as much showing what they do as they are trying to look noble, to look aristocratic, to raise their status. But we have enough information that we can figure these kinds of things out. Look at this box. That's an interesting one, I think. That's a box that painters used, filled it with linseed oil, and put brushes there to keep them fresh so they could continue to work with them.
So it's to remind us that it really is a craft, or more.
That's exactly right.
Is that the right word?
That's exactly right. My idea here was, we're used to listening to beautiful songs, music, look at beautiful paintings, look at beautiful books, read beautiful books. Still, when we do that, we don't realize that it goes through a whole process of making. And this process of making has been going on for centuries, for generations. And therefore, people learn a system. The system can be learned and passed on to later generations. So just an awareness of the fact that these things are made. This is a craft, like making shoes, like making cars now, whatever else. Art is something that really moves us. We feel that it's food for our spirit in a way that few things are in life, but it is made like everything else. And it's interesting to go back and think about that for a little bit, just to focus on that idea before one moves back to what in the end all this is about, which is the beauty of art.
Yeah, I want to add that you've taught us so much that Rubens, was really understood classical literature. He was highly cultured, like the maximum exponent
right,
of his generation.
That's right. He collected ancient sculptures. He wrote books on ancient culture. An interesting thing he did to me is that he wrote a book on Renaissance palaces, so that Europeans could build palaces, buildings, houses that reminded them of ancient and Renaissance culture, as if that was the height of what one could be. He talks about his artistic project as regaining the glory of the ancients. So he thinks our life has kind of come down, and he's trying to bring it all back up to an epic height, the way he sees it. Let me show you, Christina, some paintings that we have here. Well, we have a fun thing. We have Rubens's hat, which we've actually commissioned, of course. We don't own the original. It's done with palo de Campeche, which is a 16th century dye that came from Mexico to Europe, and which was the fanciest dye they had at the time. We have a sword. We know that he was allowed to carry a sword by the rulers of the Spanish Netherlands, where he worked. You didn't wear a sword to fight. You carried it more as a sign of status.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do it because you wanted to. You had to be allowed to do it. So that's a sign of his status. So this is simply a way of reminding people these things are made. But what do you think of these? I want to ask you something, Christina.
Yeah.
These two. These are two paintings made by Rubens for the King of Spain, 1636.
Both
Very
of them.
large commission, both made by him and his workshop.
Right.
By him within his workshop system. Think of 25 painters working for Rubens all at the same time. Think of paintings that are made in different stages, so one layer, then another layer over, then another, and another, and another. A master can paint some layers and his collaborators can paint others. Depending on whether the painting is all by the master, it's more expensive. All by assistants, it's cheaper. By assistants, but retouched by him, there's a middle price. And he actually tells us this in a lot of letters. So one thing that we're challenging viewers to do is, one of these is clearly I mean, when I say clearly, I mean for someone trained in looking at Rubens paintings. But one is a great, great Rubens painting. The other one has flaws, it's not up to standards, and that means it's by one of his assistants. So which do you think is which? Or do you know already?
Right, so what you want to help us is to see how a workshop works, you know, and how, what the difference between the artist, or how it worked in the 17th century, a kind of the team that was behind the artist.
But in the
that
end,
was the head.
That's right, but in the end also the fact that when you work with a team and you make different kinds of products depending on how much they participate, the ones that you make yourself are the best.
Yeah.
And you're saying it, you're charging more money, and we should see it in that way too.
Right. Okay.
So the workshop system produced a lot of paintings, but also really great paintings. And these two, which are part of the same commission, same time for the same room, one has a lot of workshop hand in it,
right,
and the other one is all by Rubens.
Okay, so this is unfair that I think I know the answer already. And the Rubens is, or by only his hand is Saturn devouring his son.
Right. Let me see if we can tell people where you can see this. If you look in this area here, and maybe that not of the way, it may be better to see it from far away. Actually, I'm not sure in this case. There's a lack of volume. This is not well resolved anatomically, and also this fold is too rigid. So this has to do with two things. On the one hand, it's not up to a standard. Rubens paints, draws volume, anatomy in a way that's very correct. Later artists won't worry about this. You can't judge a Rembrandt, for example, by saying the knee is well painted. Rembrandt's doing something else. He's being very creative. But in Rubens' case, he will paint anatomy very well, volume, space, 3 dimensions. His students, or his assistants, actually, will do it less well than him. So in this case, it's simply a matter of standards. The king is commissioning this from him. He's saying, I don't have time, the commission is too big, I'll do some myself, but I'll subcontract a lot of others to other painters. That's what's going on here.
So you're helping us discern, or create a discerning eye.
That's right.
Of quality.
Exactly, yeah. I want to do a little publicity here. I wrote a book on quality in art. It's about quality in art from the 15th to the 18th century. And it's precisely about this, the idea that, yes, there was a very set, very defined standard of quality that could be easily understood. It was defined by them, by artists, not by us. It's not a matter of whether I can like this painting more than that one. That they would have said, this way of rendering anatomy is not up to standard. So I wrote a book about this because I think it's a key issue that we often forget about. What's quality in art according to their standards? We have the book that comes with this exhibition also deals with more than this, more than the issue of quality, just how the workshop worked, who was in it, how paintings were made, so that we understand that there's this constant sequence of now me, now you, now me, now you. I think we're getting close to the end, but maybe we should mention the video.
Yeah, the video is really interesting.
Just
Tell
quickly,
us about it.
Well, we hired a painter, Jacobo Alcalde, and for 8 months, he copied a Rubens original using historical techniques and materials. And that ended up in a 6-minute video, pretty short, but very, very revealing about how paintings go through different layers and how this layering of paintings allows for the interaction of one painter and another one. They can come in and out at different stages. So this is something that's really worth seeing. It's in the web page of the museum, and it has English and Spanish subtitles, so one can actually see it without coming to the show.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much for your time this morning and for sharing with us this great exhibit. And
thank you.
Congratulations, I really love it.
Thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you, and we'll see you again next week. Find out more about American Friends of the Prado Museum and our sister institution in Spain, Amigos del Museo del Prado, and thank all of you.